Hi, everybody. I'm in a different venue tonight, and I hope that the audio is working properly. It would help to have the fifth ray at this moment in greater abundance than I have it. But I will do the best I can under the circumstances. We are working through esoteric astrology, and we have discussed two statements. The first statement is very surprising because it basically says that astrology is based upon an illusion. The deluding appearances of things as they are, or rather as they seem to be. The next statement seems almost contradictory, that astrology is the greatest and the oldest of all the sciences and the purest form of occultism that we can present at this time. So you wonder if the science is based upon illusion, how it can be the purest form of occult science at this time. And yet the illusion is correlated with all the illusions we have on this planet, including the illusory understanding, the very partial understanding of how our lives work, the qualities, the timing of our life. All of them, in the deeper sense, are illusions as well. So the apparencies of astrology, the illusions of astrology, do correlate very well with the illusions we call our daily living process. And we can make sense out of our process of daily living by consulting the positions of the Earth relative to the Sun and the planets relative to the Earth and to the Sun. This has long been proven. Now we will come to the third statement. And this statement, the Tibetan begins in this way. This brings me to the third statement, which is so basic and fundamental that I would ask you to pause and contemplate it, even though you grasp not its full implications as yet. The ancient wisdom teaching, or the ancient wisdom teaches, that space is an entity. It is with the life of this entity and with the forces and energies, the impulses and the rhythms, the cycles and the times and seasons that esoteric astrology deals. Well, space is the self-perception of the universal logos. This is how, at least I conceive it, after a great deal of thought. Space is a perception. And when the universal logos conceives himself, perceives himself, that consciousness is space. That is one philosophical understanding of universal space. I think there is also what the Tibetan is describing, possibly a supra-universal space, in which case he equates the absolute, the one without a second, the ultimate reality, with space. But I choose to consider space in the first mode of its description as the entirety of the consciousness, of the self-consciousness of the universal logos. And when we look at all of these factors, the so-called forces, energies, impulses, rhythms, cycles and times and seasons, these are all the contents of consciousness of the universal logos. These are the differentiated modes that it has of perceiving itself. And space is the entirety of the perception, and the differentiated types of perception are the energies, impulses, rhythms, cycles, times, and seasons. The universal logos emanates itself in decreasing capacities of perception. So every emanation has less capacity for perception than the universal logos per se. That perception is narrowed down increasingly as the process of emanation proceeds. And it is the vibrations, the pulsations of these emanations, their relationship to the fundamental integer gods, the fundamental number deities that control all process within general space. Well, sometime I will try to elaborate on that in a way that takes it apart bit by bit. But suffice it to say that all that is perceivable by any entity is this one self. And beyond the perception of itself and the consciousness arising from that perception, the contents of consciousness arising from that perception, space does not go. There is no such thing as space outside the self-perception of the one manifest deity in cosmos. Now, this is not the absolute of which I'm speaking. I'm talking about the one point which arises within the absolute. So it is an abstract subject, but let's just say that we have the notion that we are living in one being, and we are that one being, no matter how minuscule we may find ourselves to be. There is no content of consciousness within that one being, which is not the entirety of the one being itself, essentially considered. So no matter what we perceive, it is all the entity. It is all the space of its self-consciousness, so to speak, trying to link these two ideas of space and consciousness. There is nothing that is not alive. There is nothing that is not the one being, essentially. And all illusions are real. In other words, their appearances may not give us the idea of what they essentially are, but beneath their appearances are the one and only reality. Space is an entity. Well might we ponder on this statement for a long time. I've been pondering it for years. The universal logos is that entity, and its own self-perception produces what we call space. So HPB made this statement in The Secret Doctrine, and here DK is saying, I would remind you that there is an astrological key to the secret doctrine which cannot yet be given in completeness. Well, DK has given us a tremendous astrology. He intends to give us more, either following the year 2025 or beginning in that year. And even then we can wonder whether the entirety of the astrological key will be given to us, because I think there is just too much knowledge, too much ability to coordinate all the many processes in our local cosmos, perhaps to ends which do not serve the plan. And so it must be given out slowly as humanity is ready.